Good evening. Welcome to the October 3rd, 2017 regular Salem City Council meeting. It will now come to order. We don't have Mr. Faber with us this evening. I'll lead us in the invocation, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business, guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Present.
Mrs. Dickey? Here. Mr. Gall?
Present.
Mrs. Mancuso? Here. Mr. Knoll?
Present.
Mr. Whitehill?
Present.
6 members.
Do I have a motion, Mr. Whitehill?
Move to excuse Mr. Paparotis.
All right, is there a second on that? Mr. Knoll? Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Dickey?
Yes.
Mr. Gall?
Yes.
Mrs. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Mr. Whitehill?
Yes.
Mr. Paparotis is excused. Everyone's received a copy of the minutes from the September 19th, 2017 meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes? Seeing none, they'll stand as approved. There are no petitions and remonstrances this evening. Receiving of visitors, Mr. Nestick.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I was going to say fellow council members, but not anymore. It is good to be back here, and it's good to see you all. I do have two things that I want to discuss, and they're both related, and one of them is the council contingency fund, and the other one is charter commission support. So the origin of the council contingency fund, I just want to bring this up again because we've talked about it a number of times since that fund was formed. But the origin of those funds is oil and gas money, which was a windfall from the city. It was not income tax receipts. So the spirit of those funds, and I hope the Finance Committee, considers making this formal, because it was never really written down in paper, but it was expressed a number of times in emails and back and forth when those funds were put together. But the guidelines for the Council Contingency Fund is that a project forwarded to Council by a councilman should be a project having impact longer than 1 year and should be for the benefit of that council person's constituency or the committee that councilman chairs. The cost limit of a project forwarded by a council person is proportionate by the council person to the amount in the contingency fund. A council person cannot choose a project but needs to discuss it in a committee of the whole and convince other council members that it meets the requirements of having impact of more than a year and being beneficial to the council person's constituents or committee. If a majority votes for it, it passes. If a project cost exceeds the allotted amount of the council person's pro rata amount of the council contingency, then that council person can get other members to pitch in from their pro rata share. So that is the spirit of these funds, and we've talked about it before, and I want to bring up something else now. Council has unanimously voted to put the issue of the formation of a charter commission on the ballot. As you know, this is just the first step to examine whether a charter is right for Salem or not, and if so, what the right structure of government is for Salem. 263 other communities across Ohio have done this by taking this first step. Should the voters choose to form a commission to look into the possibility of a charter rather than our current form, the use of the contingency funds to support that commission is exactly the right use of these funds. So I would encourage council to consider using those funds, of which there's more than 100,000 now in the budget, using a portion of those funds to support the work of the commission should the voters choose to pass it. Now, I understand there's an effort to get council candidates to pledge not to support the work of the commission should the voters choose to select one. One fallacy circulating is that a charter will limit Salem's citizens' representation in their local government. That's factually not true. In fact, what would be true is if there were an effort to undermine the will of the voters after the fact to not support the work of the commission. I urge council and candidates not to make any pledges that is inconsistent with the voters' will. The only reason this issue is being reconsidered is because the vote was so close last time and the effort was skewed by misinformation that was circulated at the last minute. Also, there's a misconception that a charter will limit the ability for political parties' input in city management and affairs. Also, this is not true, and it's probably the reason for trying to undermine the work of the commission if chosen. The fact is, the charter can reflect the exact setup we have now. The last two cities Salem-sized to form a charter, New Franklin and Fostoria, both have elected councils and mayors and are substantially similar to their statutory equivalents. We will be having forums, to talk about this, to give people more information. I urge council members to please show up at those forums, express your opinions, whether it's for or against, so that we can have an open, public, and fair debate. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. That concludes the receiving of visitors. Move on to report of city officials. Mayor Berlin, prior to the meeting, advised me that he did not have a report this evening, but would be happy to answer any questions from council members. Seeing none. Law Director, Attorney Zellers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no formal report, but of course, like many of us, I just wanted to say that my thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims of the horrible tragedy in Las Vegas. I know that's on all of our mind at this point. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions for our Law Director? Seeing none, thank you. Auditor Mrs. Brothers advised me prior to the meeting commencing that she did not have any report, but would be happy to answer any questions of council members. Mr. Gall.
Madam Auditor, you've been very gracious in chairing a group of individuals that are attempting to gather funds and servers for the banquet of Salem. And I wonder if you'd give us the date again, and are you still looking for additional individuals to help you?
Yes, the date is the first Monday in December. I believe it's the 4th, thank you. December 4th.
And are you still looking for folks to help you?
Yes, we need 22, between 22 and 25 people to help. So if you would like to help with the banquet, please email me. And if you have a preference of what you'd like to do, some people like to serve, some people like to do the table. So yeah, you get to eat anyway. And then obviously monetary donation would also be welcomed as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Treasurer Dr. Conrad.
President, Mayor, and Council, yes. I always ask if you can get your emails on the tax collection. This is about, Fred emailed you about House Bill 49. Did you all get the information? Yes. I don't know if you read it. Fred's going to work you tonight. He's going to help out. But anyhow, what this is about is it's been passed. And it's going to be enacted, it becomes law January 1st, 2018. And what it is the state of Ohio wants to take a piece of our pie. We've had a 1% income tax since 1968. And I don't know about you, but we finally had an increase in 2016 to fix roads. I think we've been efficient, done a good job. The state of Ohio's track record in the IRS is not as good. This is not the IRS, but anyhow, using them as an example, I don't think they're very efficient. They want to take a 0.5% fee to collect our taxes on corporations, businesses, and partnerships. There's a class action suit going to be done by some cities in Ohio. We'd like to join them. It's going to cost us $4,000, but I don't see why we want to fix what's not broken by, we've been collecting the tax and doing it well. Why should we let the state of Ohio Department of Taxation come into our taxes and try to take a percentage? It's a 0.5%, you might say, but it's not written they can increase at any time. But that's why Fred and I are here, and then Fred will answer any questions. He's probably more literate on the taxation.
Here we sent out a packet of letters and information from different sources. There's a law firm in Columbus, Frost, Brown, and Todd that's leading this movement. I think the first city that joined is Dublin, Ohio, and they're the ones that contacted Frost, Brown, and Todd to start this action. Had some notes about this. Municipal income tax is the main source of revenue for most cities and villages in Ohio. House Bill 5 was passed in 2014. That made some major changes. Then House Bill 49 was passed just this past June 2017, and they're making major changes to the way municipal income tax is collected. House Bill 49, which was just recently passed, is now it has provision that allows the Ohio Department of Taxation to administer business income tax if a business chooses to participate. And by business income tax, that means corporations and partnerships. And they're filing their annual business profits tax return. So the state wants to give these businesses the option to file for the city through the state instead of directly through the city, which they've been doing for years without any problem. But now that they want to be able to file it through the state instead, and then the state will take a 0.5% fee on whatever payments they receive before they pass it on to us. So the situation that is caused by House Bill 49 is that cities are required to, they made a change to the Ohio Revised Code 718, which is the chapter of Ohio Revised Code that determines how the municipal income tax works and what the rules are for municipal taxes to be collected. There's a new provision in there, 718.85 through 90, I believe it is, that says that if the cities have to adopt this before January 1st, 2018, and this section says that the cities agree to allow the state to administer and collect the business profits taxes. If you don't pass this, then it says in the early part of Ohio Revised Code 718.04 says that cities can lose their ability to administer their own tax if they don't adopt all the provisions. And so it's the way they worded it is kind of a trap. If you don't accept this, then you can lose your ability. So you have to go ahead and accept this. That's what they're saying. So the cities across the state have looked at this and said this isn't right. They want to file an injunction against this to stop it and relook at it, rework it. And so the information that was passed out to you is from this coalition that's putting this together. If you were able to read through the provisions, they say that timing is important. The group needs to know that cities are interested and want to make a commitment by October 15th, and they would need an ordinance passed or some kind of provision saying that cities are going to participate by the end of October 30th.
Did you want the money about that too? Our fee would be about $4,000. We're doing it by the size of the city.
Right. And there's a chart in the information based on the population of what the fees would be, and Salem falls into the 10,000 to 25,000 population, so the fee for the Salem size would be $4,000 to be involved in this. And this is the city council's decision to what they want to do, but I wanted to pass the information on to you and as soon as I got it so that you're aware of the situation and can decide what to do. Let's see. Did anybody have any questions about this? Or?
Mr. Gall?
Mr. President, if I may, Craig, there is a distinction, is there not, between individual income tax returns and the business tax. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Okay, so none of this deals with individuals that are filing city income tax. Is that correct?
At this time, that's correct.
Okay.
There's three categories. There's withholding tax, which is wage tax withheld by employers from the employee's wages, and that's passed on to us on a monthly or quarterly basis. There's business profits taxes that we receive annually and the individual taxes that we receive annually.
Okay, so just to clarify this, we're dealing with the question of who businesses should send their tax obligations to. Businesses, corporations, partnerships. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and without getting into a decision on the process, the argument is that when you have a company like Panera or any McDonald's or whatever, they have to file income tax in every single city that they have a business presently. This bill gives them the option to write one check and let the state of Ohio divide it up and pass it to the cities in which they have the business in. That's the concept, is it not?
That's the concept.
Okay. Your concern is one, the fee, the 0.5%. So we're not talking about any fee coming from individuals. We're talking about fees that the city may lose from corporate partnerships business tax.
Correct.
Okay. Do you have an idea on what we would lose if the businesses in Salem would use the state program?
Well, just in the fees, currently, as of last month, for Salem, we've collected $894,000 in business profits tax for the.
I'm sorry, would you give me the number again, please?
$894,000.
And that's over a period of what?
That's what we've collected so far year to date this year.
Year to date.
And that's from mainly 2016, but other years are involved in that too.
And at this point, you're saying we lose 0.5% or approximately $40,000.
I don't think it would be that much. I think it would be 4,000.
Yeah.
4,500.
One more zero on
Yeah.
this total number. Okay, so and I'm sorry, that would cost us $4,500?
Approximately. And that's just year-to-date figure. But
So we're talking about a total of approximately $7,500 then, yearly? If this is 9 months worth.
possibly.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Attorney Zeller.
Thank you. Fred, if I may, when we've had several discussions about this, you indicated that there are other programs, taxing programs that the state has taken over where the 0.5% has grown to a higher rate. Isn't that correct?
That's right. There's an electric utilities tax from telephone companies and electric companies, and they currently charge a 1.5% rate on that. And for the business profits tax, they initially wanted, earlier in this year, they wanted to to require all businesses to file only with the state, and they would collect a 1% fee and charge that to the city. And they changed that, and they were going to make it optional, and if there was a fee, they would charge that to the taxpayer. Then at the last minute, they changed it. Now it's optional, and the charge is going to go to the city at 0.5% at the current language.
I may follow up on this.
Go ahead.
And Fred, I know you attend a lot of these seminars with other municipal tax authorities. Is the concern then that this is just a stepping off point, that it may increase? Is that?
That's right. That's the concern. It seems minimal at the moment, but if you look at it over the future, it's going to make some changes in cash flow to the cities. If the city doesn't provide the proper information to the state in this language, they could withhold 50% of the taxes due. The state's making their own laws to administer business profits taxes filed through this manner. They won't use the Salem tax laws. They'll use their own laws. They have under this authority. They're allowed to write their own laws for this situation. One other thing that Mr. Gall brought up was about the ability to write one check to multiple cities. And I was involved with the formation of the Business Gateway tax as it applies to municipalities when they first started this, and went to meetings with the Rita Group and the other large cities. And the intention was at that time to set the Business Gateway up so that businesses could file, or preparers could file with multiple cities on the Business Gateway, filing one tax return and dividing it up among many cities through the Business Gateway at no cost to the cities. So now that...
Is that still functioning?
Well, it's never really developed properly. They're in the process of reworking the Business Gateway to be able to do that now. And we haven't had too much use of businesses filing that way to date. We have a lot of withholding tax filed that way, but a few business profits returns.
Comments, others?
I just wanted to make one other point. Fred, reading the information that you gave me, reading the proposed lawsuit that's going to be prepared on the class action, I mean, it's not, the issue really isn't business-friendly communities. That's not what the litigation is about. It's really about another erosion by the state legislature against Article 18 of the Constitution, which gives the municipalities their home rule authority to make their own laws and govern themselves, self-governing. That's a constitutional provision that gives us that authority. That's the basis of that lawsuit. They're hinging upon that again without the basis to do so. And that's the challenge. It's not as though the Municipal League is trying to not be friendly to business. They just don't want the Constitution eroded, because there are other methods, as Fred has just pointed out here through that business portal, gateway portal, that the same thing can happen to assist businesses in that regard, but it shouldn't happen through a legislative action like 718.
Am I not correct in that on attachment 2, this memo, it lists all the lawsuits separating the municipalities from state.
I think that is part of the information that you guys have
There's
sent.
always been one to keep municipalities' taxation and state taxation separate.
Yes.
Is my understanding.
I think that's correct, Dr. Conlon.
Mrs. Dickey, at one point in time you were raising your hand. I don't know if you still wanted to do that.
I do.
All right.
Some of the things he took care of, so that's great. The other thing is, so what you're asking us is to join in the lawsuit at this time for $4,000. My concern is that this is an issue that we discussed last year and took no action on because we didn't feel that this was something we wanted to oppose. So now you're asking us to put money towards something we already said we didn't want to get into.
I'm presenting the information for you to make your own decision.
Yes, so that's just a point I wanted to bring up, and it is very cumbersome right now for businesses in the state of Ohio, the way the taxation is done on their businesses. And the fact that the gateway isn't being used tells me either number one, enough businesses haven't been informed about how to use it, or it doesn't work for them, because they would do it if it were free and easier. So I'm not sure that that's really been an option for our businesses here right now. So I have some concerns about opposing this, because it is an attempt, even though it may be against the Constitution and what it says now, but it is an attempt by our legislators to try to make our state a more business-friendly state, so that businesses will come here and locate in multiple areas.
Well, in response, Salem isn't the only city that's interested in this. It started with Dublin, Ohio. In the information I gave you, there was an article from Lancaster, Ohio, that they're joining this group, and Coshocton, Ohio, not various cities around the state. In the Morning Journal today, there was an article, East Liverpool is joining this group. And I talked with the chief legal counsel with Rita this afternoon, and Rita's looking into having all their member cities join into this litigation in their own way.
I guess what I question is, if you have Ohio Gateway, and Ohio makes no money off it, they don't seem to have pushed it. I mean, shouldn't they kind of publicize it? I think they'll publicize this because they're making 0.5%. And I question the validity there. When you're getting paid and you have something for free.
But if it doesn't work, or it's not
It
known.
would work if people knew about it, though,
Exactly.
Cindy. I'm saying I don't think the state has really gone out of its way to publicize it when they're making their money off it.
All right, we're not going to go back and forth at this point. That's
Can I ask just one more question?
Go ahead, Mr.
Sorry, I
Wall.
don't know what RETA stands for. I've heard it over and over again, but what does it represent?
Regional Income Tax Authority. It's a group of cities that have gone together to administer income tax. There's approximately 285 cities together in that right now.
It's just a volunteer group of city income tax departments.
I don't know what the exact term is. It's a legal entity of cities that have joined together for this purpose. They have a board. All the cities are members of the group, and they have a board of directors, and they appoint an administrator for the group.
Thank you, Mr. President.
welcome. Any other questions?
Just a comment, if I may.
Mr. Waito?
If the members do wish to call a committee of the whole meeting, I'd be happy to hold it, but I will await whether council has interest in calling that.
Well, I was going to refer it to you, and then you can determine if there's the need to have that meeting.
I don't see a finance meeting because I think
No.
it's clear at the finance meeting. So if there is a committee of the whole desired, we should do it quickly. So I'll wait to hear from the members.
Yeah, under Rule 37, I was going to have the committee of the whole look at that again if they want to do that.
Right.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Unless there's something in addition to what you've already presented, I appreciate you.
Here, if there's any other questions.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for the time.
Just, the only thing I'd like to add, just so you look at the stuff, I mean, right, the attachments.
Right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Safety Service Director, Mr. Kentz.
Mr. President, I have no report this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Kentz? Mr. Brown?
No question, just a comment. Mr. Kentz, I'd appreciate it if you would send a reply to that last email I sent. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may.
Mr. Gall?
Mr. Kentz and the law director, would you bring me up to date on your conversations on electric and gas? Did we hire somebody? Not you asked the law director if the mayor could hire somebody on the gas aggregation, and I don't know what the response was.
Attorney Zellers?
Mr. Gall, yeah, I believe the former administrator of our gas aggregation group was AMPO or AMP.
American Municipal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the group we've had since we first started this. They're the ones that have already put forth some proposals about the next group to go with. I think the contract was up for renewal. I had discussed it with Mr. Kentz verbally that I thought the mayor would be authorized to sign that without additional council things because of the way the contract is laid out. And I know that Mr. Kent's then asked me that for written confirmation, but I'm saying it here now. I think that the mayor can administratively make that decision to use them as our representative. But as far as once they provide us with some options of who you want to go with, that'll be a council decision of who you choose to be our actual gas provider.
Mr. Gall.
Mr. Kent, Mr. Zellers, my understanding is though that that's just gas, is that correct?
That is correct.
So we're back to the point, all these emails we're getting from electric providers is something that this council should look at?
Yeah, I don't believe that we have a manager or a managing group like we do with the gas. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kent, for the electric side. So as far as making a decision about who to use for the electric provider, that's just going to have to come straight to council for their decision, and whether or not you want to have them come to a committee meeting and have proposals taken, or receive them by written proposal and council make a decision. That I guess that's going to be up to either the committee of the whole or the utilities committee, or however you choose to go forward on that.
Right. Mr. Kent, obviously if there's somebody out there interested in doing it for gas, is there not any companies out there that are willing to take a look at all the electrical options and give us some suggestions?
I would say yes, but we haven't spent a lot of time on electrical. Electrical aggregation does not end until May of 2018. Gas is October, so that's why it was more important to...
October 17, this month it's over, right?
Correct. But it's not be to our disadvantage if we don't move forward immediately. We're not going to lose money, but we would like to get that started. The first of the year we'll probably we haven't really been contacted by any electrical aggregators. And once we do, that would be a council issue, because this has not been an issue since we've been in our positions. It was a long time ago. And I think at that time the city received a pretty good sizable amount of money for going with an electrical aggregator. And so the council would have to kind of be involved in that. And after the first year, we'll probably get involved with that.
Well, if I may, have you not received
Mr. Sells contacted me numerous times and
electrical?
Regarding electrical, yes.
Okay. And that's the information you sent to the utilities?
That's correct. That's what, and we've clarified that got moved to the Utilities Commission committee, just to be clearly, as it had been handled in the past. And then, of course, from the committee, it then would come to council.
Well, I'm hoping that on behalf of the Utilities Committee, if there are individuals out there that have an expertise in this area and would like to operate just like the gas is, I hope that they are listening and would make an effort to contact Mr. Kent so that we can have some guidance on that also, please. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Kent? All right, thank you. Utilities, Mr. Weingart.
Mr. Chairman, I have no report for this evening.
All right, any questions for Mr. Weingart? Seeing none, thank you. Mr. Faber's not here. Council Clerk, Mrs. Bricker. All right, that concludes the report of city officials. Move on then to report of standing committees. Finance, Mr. Whitehill.
Thank you, Mr. President. My committee has not met. I have no reports.
All right. Streets, alleys, and sidewalks, Mr. Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My committee has not met and probably won't unless Mayor Berlin wants to discuss changes to this year's paving or to discuss next year's. Thank you.
Utilities, Mr. Gall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Zellers has been kind enough to go through 4 or 5 other cities' illicit stormwater ordinances, has made proposals on illicit discharge, and the members of the committee have received 4 or 5 other city ordinances plus the draft that Mr. Zellers has presented to us. I'd like to call a meeting of the Utilities Committee for the 17th of October at 6 o'clock. I believe that is 2 weeks from today.
Correct.
And if Mr. Kentz is available, and I hope that he will have an opportunity to review the proposal that Mr. Zellers has offered, and we'd love to have his input.
What time was that again?
6.
Anything further, Mr. Gall?
No, sir, thank you.
All right. Traffic and safety, Mrs. Mancuso.
Thank you, Mr. President. My committee has not met and I have no report.
Rules and ordinances, Mrs. Dickey.
Thank you. My committee has not met, but I want to thank Mr. Gall for reading the minutes last meeting or our meeting that we had previously. I appreciate that. And also I would like to set a meeting for the 19th of October at 6:30 p.m. here in Chamber to continue our discussion about the C3 and C2 zoning and also an issue about a sign on North Lincoln that we need to discuss a little bit further, but I don't have all the details yet. We're waiting for some more research on that. That's it.
All right.
Mr. President, if I may, the chairman has been very gracious to
6:30.
make sure we have the opportunity. But this is one of those times that the folks that are in C3 and those that are in C2, and we're looking at boundary changes that affect a lot of people. I hope that they will take advantage of the chairman's opportunity to speak on the 19th at 6:30 and other members of City Council. There is a major proposal on the size geographical change of C3, and then the question is even if we need a C2, if we change everything else from C1. So there are some major zoning issues that I hope the other members of City Council, because I know that anything that comes through here, at least after one reading, has to go to the zone planning committee, and I'm sure they're already looking at it too, but it'd be nice to have the other members input on that change, proposed change, excuse me.
Mrs. Dickey, anything further? Anybody from the Parks Committee?
Committee has not met, no meeting is scheduled.
All right, thank you. Economic Development, Mr. Knoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. My committee has not met. As a result, I have no report.
Committee of the Whole, Mr. Whitehill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee of the Whole has not met. I have no report.
All right, that concludes report of standing committees. Move on then to second and third reading of ordinances and resolutions. Mr. Knoll.
Mr. President, I move that the clerk read ordinance number 170919-53 for its second reading.
Okay, Madam Clerk, will you please read resolution number 53 by title only for its second reading this evening?
Being a resolution approving the Simmons Feed and Supply Company doing business as Simmons Grain Company for participation in the Economic Growth Initiative Incentive Program as set out in Chapter 187 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Salem.
Thank you. That concludes the second and third reading of ordinances and resolutions. Surprisingly, we have no introduction of ordinances and resolutions this evening. Move then on to the pleasure of council. Mrs. Mancuso.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to thank our K-9 officers. They came out yesterday to Consumers Bank and did a nice little presentation, brought the dogs out, and Mary Ann came from the Salem News, did just a real nice article, and they were very well received, and just it's really nice to have two officers like that in our city with those dogs, so thank you.
Very good. Mrs. Dickey.
I would just like to send out my prayers to all the people in all the disasters in the past month, from the hurricanes, the fires in the west, flooding, and the Las Vegas shooting. We just seem to really have gotten bombarded recently here in the United States. I'd also like to say that the Parks is doing a scarecrow display this year. Last year they did a contest and it was pretty enjoyable to watch the things that were going up in front of the memorial building. This year I guess it's not going to be a contest, just a display, and they're kind of asking if businesses or organizations or groups would like to participate in that, do together, trying to get more scarecrows. And so if anybody on council would be interested in participating in that, if they'd let me know, I could get a hold of them and we could do a scarecrow. We're all scared. We could do it.
Thank you. Mr. Knoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing tonight.
All right. Mr. Gall.
Mr. President, Salem, Perry Township citizens are extremely generous individuals. However, I would just like to remind them to be very careful on to whom they give their hard-earned wages as a donation. Unfortunately, a couple of my clients have already donated to causes thinking they're helping people, and it's already going in somebody's pocket. When you make a donation for all these miserable things that are happening around the world today, please make sure you know who you're giving to. And if you don't know, there's an app, a website called Charity Navigator that actually searches and goes through prospective recipients of donor funds and judges them and grades them. And so whether you give through your church, so you know that it's going through that denomination, service organizations, it's sad. A couple elderly folks have already sent money orders to groups that are named very well, but I know for a fact that money's going nowhere except somebody's pocket. So please be very careful when you make your generous donations.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. I want to thank the people that sent me cards and emails regarding my grandson's passing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitehill?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I just want to commend the candidates for office this fall. It's a lot of work. It's putting yourself out there, and as traipsing around, seeing other signs go up and putting mine in. I'm reminded why so many people don't do that. So to all the candidates, I wish them the best.
Thank you. Usually I don't have a whole lot to add, but with what has taken place in Las Vegas, something troubled me today. The situation is bad enough, and I was talking to a fellow attorney down in juvenile court, and he made a very good observation that he was just shocked and dismayed at what took place, as I think most of the adults were with regards to that. And he said, unfortunately, his concern is for his children, that they're going to become desensitized to this, and that it's just going to, when they get older and are the adults, it's just going to be another Monday, because this seems to be the norm of how things are going, not only in our country but around the world. So, and I have a great niece that's 5, and when he said this, it gave me concern with regards to that. So I would suggest, and it's nothing for a 5-year-old to learn about now. They need to be 5 years old. But certainly as children get older and we have young adults and teenagers, I hope that families discuss these things so that it just isn't another event that keeps happening, and that people talk about these things. And hopefully, I certainly don't have the answers necessarily, but hopefully if enough people talk about these things, we will find the answers. That's all I have this evening. Thank you. Council's adjourned.